Hi guys, it's Joe at Aguilar Terrariums, and today we're going to make a terrarium out of a demijohn and show you the process of making a terrarium, whether that's for a demijohn or any other container. So let's begin. The reason for a demijohn, they're usually regularly available, especially off like the Facebook Marketplace and stuff, so you can pick them up locally. They're used to brew beer and other alcohols in them, but we're going to use them to build a terrarium. Nice and cheap. I think I picked these up on the Facebook Marketplace for, I think this one was like £4. You can get them anywhere between like £2 to £5 each. Give it a good clean out, let it dry. So yeah, we'll begin. What we're going to do is go through what we need. First of all, what I'll do is I'll kind of explain what a terrarium is and how it kind of works, how they're self-sustaining, and how that process kind of works within the container that you put it in, and then we'll go into building it with the equipment that we need and the process of doing it. So yeah, let's begin. The first part is that water from the plants and soil seeps down into the drainage layer and collects there, ensuring that the roots remain moist but not waterlogged. This process helps regulate the moisture levels in the terrarium, preventing both drought and waterlogging. As the terrarium warms up throughout the day, the water begins to evaporate. This water then rises to the top through the different layers and ends up at the top of the container. This evaporation process is driven by heat, similar to how water evaporates in nature when exposed to sunlight. When this water vapour reaches the cooler areas, like the upper glass and lid, it condenses into water droplets. This condensation mimics the natural dew formation on leaves and surfaces in a forest, creating a microclimate within your terrarium. These droplets then grow larger over time and eventually fall back down, simulating natural rainfall within the terrarium. This rain nourishes the plant and keeps the soil moist, maintaining a balanced and self-sustaining water cycle. The plants, moss and soil absorb this water, nourishing them. Any excess water drips back into the drainage layer and the cycle continues, maintaining a balanced ecosystem. This continuous cycle of evaporation, condensation and precipitation ensures that your terrarium remains a self-thriving, self-contained environment. So now we've explained how a terrarium works and how it kind of self-sustains itself, its own little microclimate ecosystem. We'll show you the equipment that we need in order to make it. So I've got everything listed here, laid out on the table. So first of all, we've got our tools. I'll post a link in the description below on where to get these. So I've got this little set. It comes with the scissors. They're nice and long, the tweezers. So you've got a curved set here and a straight set, as well as like a little brush. So it's brilliant to kind of poke stuff down into. And I've got a little brush as well, which is good for poking holes and also kind of brushing away excess dirt, etc. in the terrarium. Got a box cutter and a pair of scissors. So I've got what we've got here is we've got some activated charcoal. Of course, we've got the demijohn itself, or any other container that you can use. You can use many containers, any that you can find. Closed top, even if hasn't got a top, as long as it's got a small opening. I've got the stones for the base to put in the base. This is just a pack of white spar. I got this from B&M. You can get it from B&Q, Home Base, etc. Got my own terrarium mix. However, you can get your own. You can buy pre-made mixes. For example, Soil Ninja is a great one. You can get really cheap. You can make it yourself, or you can just buy a pre-made one. I'll post a link on where to get a pre-made one, but I'll also post a link for another video on how we make our own. Really straightforward on how to make your own, and it's considerably cheaper. So we've got a mesh here. I think this mesh was actually listed on either Amazon or eBay as a kind of fly screen for front doors, or for any doors, just to stop the flies out. But it's a metal mesh. You want to either go for metal or plastic, something which necessarily won't deteriorate. If it is a metal one, then it's just got to be a kind of a galvanized or something like that, so it doesn't rust away, like this one. We've got our plants. So I've got some ferns here. Got these from Morrison's. Got a little nerve Fittonia plant, as well as a polka dot plant. So that's what I'm going to be putting in the terrarium today. And then I've also got some cool little rocks and some wood that I found. Just some cool little things just to add to the terrarium, just to make it interesting. And then of course we've got the moss, so I collected this locally, and then I just keep it moist in a shaded area. It's a bit wet, which is good. So yeah, this is the equipment that we need in order to make the terrarium. So let's start the process. So first of all, we want to make sure that the demijohn is nice and clean. So I've given it a clean up. And then what we want to do is we want to start with the rocks. So starting with my rocks, I particularly use white spar. You could use any sort of small rocks, but I use this white spar. So what we're going to do is put this in the bottom. So ideally you want a funnel. I don't actually have a funnel to hand, so I'm just going to carefully put them in. Right, so we've done that. Now I must say that was a lot more dusty than usual, considerably more dusty. That was the bottom of the bag where all the dust had kind of settled from the rocks. Usually it's a lot less dusty than that, but as you can see, we've cleaned up all the surface, all of our area. And if you can see here, let me just zoom in on the video. You can see that I've kind of filled it up maybe 1.5 inches. So you want to fill it up about 1 to 2 inches with the base layer. And then that will just be where the water collects at the bottom. And then what we need to do now is we need to use the wire mesh. So what we're going to do is get this wire mesh. And we're going to use this just to create a screen in between the rocks and the activated charcoal. Right, so what you want to do is get your mesh and just lay it out. We get our demijohn on top. We're just going to get our box cutter. We're just going to cut around. So when we do this, it's better for it to be slightly larger than smaller. It doesn't have to be too accurate. We just want to cut it around because we're just going to then put this inside the jar. So we're just going to cut that out, as you can see. And we're going to pop this in the jar. And like I said, this is going to create a nice little barrier, so that when we put the activated charcoal in, the activated cut charcoal isn't going to drop into the nice white spar. I mean, it will a little bit, but it will in general keep it clean. So we're just going to pop this in now. So carefully pop this in. And this is where we're going to use our tools. Probably just use the brush, to be honest. We just want to have it laid out nice and flat. We kind of want it so it's poking upwards rather than downwards. So we're just going to put that in just like that. Yeah. And that's step 2 done. Right, so now we've done step 2. We've done step 1, which is the stones, and we've done step 2, which is the mesh. We want to get our activated charcoal, so I get this offline. I can post a link in the description below on where to get it. So the reason for activated charcoal, some people say it's not necessary. It's not 100% necessary, but it is very helpful. So this stops like mold, etc. It absorbs a lot of toxins, and it also absorbs nutrients to keep the soil nice and rich. But the main thing is to absorb the toxins, for example, the toxins and fungus, etc. that corrode mold. So it just keeps the terrarium nice and clean. So again, I could really use a funnel, which I unfortunately don't have right now. I did order a couple, but they ended up turning up really small. So I'm just going to carefully pour this activated charcoal in. We only need a very thin layer. It just goes around the base. So it's just a very thin layer that goes around the base. That just lays in between the screen and the soil. As you can see, we just barely even need a layer of it. Just make sure the screen's completely covered. Doesn't have to necessarily be that high up. We just want the screen to be covered. Just a nice little layer. I think I might add a little bit more. You can see this activated charcoal isn't the cheapest of things, but it goes a long way. So there we go. We've done that. So if you can see, maybe ½ inch. That just surrounds the terrarium base in between the mesh and the soil that we'll now add. So I'm now just going to clean up the area again, and we'll start with the soil. Alright, I've just cleaned up the area, so now what we're going to do is add our terrarium substrate mix, so the soil basically. So this substrate mix I've made myself. It comprises of orchid bark, cocoa coir, sharp sand, activated charcoal and sphagnum moss. I'll make another video on the exact ratios, etc., and how to make it. Alternatively, as stated earlier in the video, you can buy from another company. For example, Soil Ninja is a really good company, and that's if you wanted to just buy a pre-made mix. You can buy all sorts of different pre-made soils on there, but the terrarium one is a really good one. So yeah, let's start by filling this up. So we want to fill it up probably to about 2.5–3 inches. We want enough for the plants, but we want enough to show the plants, but we also want enough space for the plants to root a bit better. So yeah, let's get this filled up. Right, so I'm going to start filling this up. Right, so there we go. So we put our substrate into it. That was pretty messy, to be honest. It's times like this with the little top entrance containers as well that I really could do with having a funnel. I think that's going to be my next purchase. If you can see here, probably a couple of inches that we've done. That should be sufficient. Pop that in, cleaned up all the surface. So yeah, I'll just use my paintbrush. It's just a very cheap little paintbrush. You can get them from places like Poundland, etc. Yeah, I've done that. So now what we want to do is we're going to start with the fun bit and add the plants. So yeah, let's start adding the plants. Right, yeah, so let's start adding the plants. So I've got a few plants here. I've got a couple of ferns. I've got my Fittonia and I've got my polka dot. This I picked up from a little independent plant shop in my town. These I got from Morrison's. So yeah, this is a calming and satisfying bit. So we'll just put on a time lapse and yeah, let's go. So to start off, what you want to do is get your paintbrush, or if you've got the toolkit, it comes with this little thing. So what we can do, you want to just create nice little holes in the soil where you can add the plants. You want to pop them in. Then you want to just take the plants out. I'm going to get a little tray just to stop the soil from going everywhere. So what we want to do is just break these up. I probably won't use it all. I'll probably split it in half. You can just see I've just split that in half. I'm going to choose my side. Take off the excess soil. And then we can just plant that in. So I'm going to use my tweezers. So I'm going to use my curved tweezers to do this. So we'll do the first one, and then I'll whack it on the old time lapse. So I'm just making a hole here. Just enough space just to put the roots into it. I don't know if you can see, let's try and move the camera. If you can see here, it's making enough space. I'm going to get my tweezers, I'll pop it in, then we're just going to place it into that hole and fill the excess hole back in, a bit like if you were just planting a plant in the garden. Nice and straightforward and nice and calming. You just want to make it look nice. Put it in a nice position. Actually, I'm going to twist it around. Get it exactly how you want. There's no right or wrong. That's what's brilliant about these as well. There is no right or wrong. It's your preference. Press it down into place. Use the paintbrush because you can press a bit firmer. Then just fill it in. Brilliant. So I'll start the time lapse now. And when it's all done, we'll move on to the next step, which will be the moss. Basically, what I'm saying in this clip is that we've now placed all the plants. I've positioned them how I like. I'm just saying now with the polka dot here, I've cut that back a little bit just to make it fit. Okay, there's no right or wrong way to place these plants. After we've done this, we'll now place the moss. So once we push them in and they stick out, that's what I'm saying here. The moss itself will actually support the plants. So if they kind of topple over, don't worry too much. The moss will support that when we start to put that in. So I've got the moss here. So this is moss that I've just collected on my walks with Ralph, my dog. I've just placed it in a bonsai plate and then just kept it wet and in shade outdoors. It's grown nicely. So what we're going to start doing is just taking off little clumps at a time. You can see we've just got the little clumps. We're going to just start popping them in the terrarium. I'm just using my tweezers here just to place them in. This bit might get a little bit messy. Don't worry too much because we're going to clean everything. If everything starts to get a bit messy and feels a bit disorganized, just trust the process. Just take it chill. This is a nice chill process. So don't worry too much. We're going to neaten it up and clean it up after we've placed all this moss. So I'm just using my spatula tool, using my other tool, just kind of push the moss into place. And what I'm going to decide now is actually to place another type of moss called star moss at the front. So I'm just going to go get that. So this is star moss that I've got here. This is another type of moss, a beautiful type of moss. I'm going to put this in the front of the terrarium just to give it a bit more texture. This I collected on my dog walks in the autumn, and I think it was November time actually, so it's getting on winter. This is just a moss that I find locally, and I've just kept it in a bonsai plate, sorry, in the shade. And I've just, kept it in the shade and nice and wet, and it's growing really nicely. So I'm going to place this in the front. I'm going to move this other moss. I've just decided just to add a bit more texture to the terrarium. I'm going to place this this kind of thicker and more visually appealing moss in the front. So I'm just going to take clumps of it. So as you can see here, I'm just taking little clumps that will just fit in the top. So I'm just going to remove the excess soil from it, as we can see. It's quite wet and it's going to make the top quite messy, but again, doesn't matter too much. We're going to clean everything up. So we're just going to place that in. I'm going to move that into the front and then use the spatula tool just to push it down and just position it nicely. You can see here. And then what I'm going to do now is I'll start the time lapse on doing the rest of the moss. We'll start this time lapse. You can see, I'll just show you what I've done so far prior. So before we start the time lapse, you can just see here, this is kind of how to do it. So we'll do the rest now, and yeah, let's go. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 You can now see there's a little slug in there. That doesn't matter too much, that's it. As you can see, I've now placed all the moss in, and I've kind of pushed it down in that previous video. Microphone's back up and running, luckily. I've put everything how I like. Because the moss is slightly more raised than the soil, it kind of props up the plants a bit better. So now what we need to do is we need to clean it, because as you can see, it's kind of started to get a bit humid, and it's also a bit messy. So I'm just going to now get some toilet roll. I'm going to use my curved tweezers and we're just going to give it a good clean. There we go. So I've given it a good clean now. Just use some tissue paper and the tweezers. So we just cleaned up all the humidity from there. So yeah, as you can see, I've just moved all the plants to one final position, just how I like it. Got all the moss in place. So yeah, it's looking nice. So now all we need to do is we need to put the little doodads in. So I'm going to use these. I've got some rocks here. And I've got some nice textured wood. So yeah, let's put a couple of these in. I think I'm quite happy with that. So when it comes to the little doodads, the little extras, less tends to be more. Less does definitely tend to be more. I tend to use, you really want it, it's a bit like, I think they do it with plating up on food as well, when the professionals plate up food. You want odd numbers, because odd numbers look more natural than even numbers, and you kind of want to place them not entirely symmetrical. I'm going to place them here and there. Put a couple of little bits of wood in that I found on my walks, as well as a few stones, larger stones. Yeah, I think that looks really nice. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'm just going to give it one last little clean, but I think we are pretty much there with of making the terrarium. I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so I'll give you one last final shot of it, and then we'll finish up. Alright guys, so that is how you make a terrarium, specifically in this instance with a demijohn. However, you can make them with all sorts of stuff, like for example, we've got this jar, we've got, make them out of all sorts of jars, all different shapes and sizes, but in this instance we've made it out of this. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free just to comment in the section below, the comment section, with any questions. Yeah, it was a really pleasant experience. This one I've actually sold to someone, a friend of a friend. So yeah, I'm going to get that all sent off to them. and hopefully they are as happy with it as I was making it. Remember, if you like this video, to give me a like and subscribe with the notifications on if you want to see more, as I'll be doing more sort of videos like this, and I hope you learned something. Yeah, thanks guys. Cheers.